Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Billy Napier, Florida, wrapping up their second scrimmage of fall camp. And we got a lot of storylines to get into, including some more freshmen that sound like they could be difference makers for Florida going into 2025. Now, two takeaways right off the bat. Number one, golf clap for Billy Napier and the boys staying healthy during the second scrimmage. Number two, this sounded like it was a little bit more of a depth scrimmage. Like, hey, we feel really good about a lot of our best football players. Let's learn about the 2 and 3 deep of this football team. And look, I get this conversation ain't for everybody. But when you're talking about Florida and what they want to do in the 2025 year, and you make no mistake about it, that's compete for an SEC championship. That's going to make a run in the college football playoffs. When you want to play your best football in the month of November, December, and January, you have to be a deep football team. And we're starting to learn a little bit more about the depth of the Florida Gators going into 2025. And Dill, it's been something that I feel like not enough people appreciate. And we've talked about this a lot. Like when people talk about Florida, they talk about DJ Lagway. There's a lot more to this football team, and you're starting to understand that the player retention that we've seen Florida have over the last couple of years, that's manufacturing and kind of representing itself in the depth that this football team has going into 2025. That's what makes this team really dangerous going into the fall. Really excited to get into some depth pieces emerging, some freshmen that are standing out. That's another thing, dude. Sorry, this is a little bit of a long intro. This freshman class for Florida, like, I know it wasn't a top 3 recruiting class in the country. They sound like they love their freshmen going into the 2025 year, a lot of which are guys that I think Florida will have to lean on at some point in 2025. Before we get into it, as always, the Florida fans, appreciate you guys. Been a blast talking this football team. The amount of support this fan base has shown the boys during the offseason has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I think the surprise of fall camp, right? Joseph Mabachu. This was a guy that was not here for spring practice or winter workouts. Summer enrollee stepped on campus about 2 months ago and has immediately generated some buzz. My question to you here, what do you think his role can be for Florida going into the 2025 year? Because the buzz, it's getting a little bit hard to ignore.
And honestly, he's kind of like a bonus depth guy because, like, everything about his story as a recruit and not coming in early and kind of the size he was, a very lean defensive lineman throughout most of his high school career, everything kind of said he'd probably be a year 3, 4 guy because
Yes.
his traits are really good. I mean, you look at the athleticism, the raw power he kind of had, some of those things that, again, like, had it all been put together by his high school career, no, but he's got something. So you were excited down the line. But, like, for him to be kind of ready this early, I mean, that's a huge benefit to Florida if they can do it, because that still is probably the one question you have is who's your fourth and fifth guy on that defensive line.
It's not a flashy conversation to have, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, we know we have a game wrecker in Caleb Banks. We have some growing confidence in Jamari Lyons coming back from the injury that he can play a lot of football. I think there's growing confidence in a guy like Brendan Bett as well. Outside of those three, like, what are we going to get from Makai going into year 2? Like, Brian Taylor and Brown, what are they going to be? We're trying to figure out who our fourth and fifth rotational pieces are in that middle of that defensive line. Can Joseph Mabachu be that kind of guy? Look, I don't need 50 snaps a game from this kid as a freshman, but I think it would be huge if we can get 10 to 15 quality snaps. And Dill, it sounds like you might get that. And you mentioned something that's important. Like, this kid was new to football, man. His first year of playing real football was as a junior in high school. I did not think it would be all ready to go year 1. Thought he wouldn't even see the field year 1. He has changed his body. I think Coach Chapman is one of the best in the business at developing defensive linemen. The fact that he sounds like he can help at least somewhere down the road. Look, even if it's not in the month of September, like, what if it's in the month of November where we can lean on this kid a little bit more? It's not the flashiest storyline to talk about, but it was one of our biggest questions for this football team going into fall camp, and we're starting to figure it out a little bit more. Number 2 storyline, Dill, the edge presence on this football team has the chance to be one of the best in the country. And it's we knew it was Tyreek Sapp. We had a feeling George Gums was going to take the step, and he sounds like he has taken that step. Cam James, one of the more underrated football players on this roster, and then freshman Jaden Woods. That's not to mention, like, LJ McCray certainly could be a factor in this position group down the line as well once he gets back from the injury. Why do I reference this? I don't think I'm breaking any news to Florida fans. Like, we know the pass rush off the edge is going to be dang good. They'll take a look at that week 3 matchup on the road against LSU. One of the biggest games, if not the biggest game of the season for Florida. What are you hearing from LSU during fall camp? We're struggling to pass protect up front. If you are Florida, that is the matchup you were looking for. LSU's got a brand new offensive line. They got question marks at offensive tackle. Can Tyreek Sapp, Jaden Woods, George Gums, Cam James go into LSU at night week 3 and go dominate that unit up front? I'm starting to believe in that storyline going into the 2025 year.
Because you saw how dangerous Florida got when their defensive line really started to turn up. And when obviously Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp really started to take games over like they did against Ole Miss, like they certainly did against LSU. You saw that defense really kind of ramp it up and start to sit on teams a little bit. I just think this is a way deeper group, especially on the edge. Like, not the interior, the depth we kind of been talking about. This edge group is incredibly deep. They're really talented. George Gums sounds like he had another good week. He's the one. He's the X factor because you know what you're getting out of Tyreek Sapp. I think you feel good about what Cam James gives you as like Tyreek Sapp's backup is probably what I'd say. George Gums, if he can really get rocking and rolling.
Can he be the sack master? You know, because one of the things maybe a miss last year was like Princely U's like sack man. Princely U had some things that he was not very good at, particularly against the run. But man, when he wanted to pin his ears back, he was a force coming off the edge. Not sure if you had that for most of the season. Now, late in November, you started to have that kind of come emerge. Can we have that in 2025? And it comes down to George Gums, and it comes down to Jaden Woods and Dill. This kid's going to play. Like, every time you read fall camp intel, Jaden, it ain't just flashes. It is consistent dominance from Jaden Woods. I'm looking at George Gums and Jaden Woods and say, hey, how good can you all be for us in 2025? Because, like you said, Tyreek Sapp's awesome. He's one of my favorite players in the country. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that goes for 12 plus sacks. I think George Gums and Jaden Woods have the ability to kind of give you that kind of pass rush production in 2025. And against LSU with the quarterback that can't get himself out of trouble all that much, that's going to be huge. Last storyline on defense, man. The linebackers going. We talked about this yesterday, so we don't have to talk a ton about it. Good to great. That's the phrasing that I would use for Florida. We were good at linebacker last year with Childs and Miles Graham going into year 2, a little bit more comfortable with this defense, and Coach Ron Roberts getting a little bit more comfortable on how to use a guy like Aaron Childs, who I think can rip it off the edge as a pass rusher. Can we have these linebackers go from really solid linebacker play to putting their fingerprint on the football game? That's what we're hearing coming out of these scrimmages. The linebackers making their presence known for this Florida Gators defense.
And again, I still harken back to like the fact that Miles Graham and Aaron Childs have kind of cemented the 1 and 2 spot. And like, that's not to say the other guys aren't going to play. Like Jaden Robinson's certainly going to play in certain situations. I'd imagine Pup Howard as well. But I think that's a nice one. I think you'd prefer those two to be the emergers because those two are, you talk about like that high-end NFL talent. That's kind of what I feel like those have. And Pup Howard's an interesting one because I feel like he might have that, but I don't think he's played like he doesn't play with.
He hasn't been healthy, man. He hasn't really been healthy, and Aaron Childs has. And it sounds like Aaron Childs is taking advantage of that opportunity. I don't care who it is. I think I give a dang if it's Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, Pup. It could be all 4 of them for all I care. I just want to see that step.
Well, but I think objectively, Aaron Childs and Miles Graham are the 2 most talented players in that room. In my opinion.
I think you sleep on Pup like a man. Pup is a
I get like what he looks like, but he doesn't play as fast as those other 2 guys. Like those 2 are much more explosive.
Hey, who do you think leads this team in sacks this year? Call you, and I care less about what my brother thinks.
It's Tyreek Sapp. As much as we want to talk, Tyreek Sapp was really starting to dominate towards the end of last year when he started to be like the steady starter. As much as we want to talk about these new guys and the emergers, Tyreek Sapp's still the guy.
I'm gonna go Gums. I think he has the potential to be a dominant pass rusher. Florida fans, I would love to hear your takes too. Because Dill, I could see some of these linebackers getting up to that, 5 or 6 sack range as well. You got a lot of pass rush ability in this front seven, and Coach Roberts going to have a field day using this front seven in a lot of different ways. Let's go to the offensive side of football real quick. And look, anytime I hear Amir Jackson popping up in the fall camp intel, I'm going to talk about it. Amir Jackson is like the girl that dumped me in 6th grade and I could never get over. Like I'm still gonna have hope, man. Amir Jackson, can he be the guy that at some point can give you that high end pass catching ability from the tight end position? Now, is he ready to be a really productive inline blocker like someone like Hayden Hansen? I don't know. But in terms of upside as a pass catcher, that's where Amir Jackson provides value. The more buzz we hear about this kid going into year 2, the more I'm thinking, hey, it doesn't have to be every snap. But when we have certain situations we get into, can we lean on Amir Jackson for be a matchup nightmare at the tight end position that I don't know if Florida has another guy that can do that on this roster?
And Billy Napier's kind of suggested that at least he's like a willing blocker. Like, again, is he physically where he needs to be? I don't
Sure.
totally know that you've gotten that sense exactly. But you just got to have level of toughness to you. If he's got it, then at least you have the prerequisite. But you are right. I mean, Hayden Hansen, as much as he's a solid, steady tight end, there's just such a limit on what he can do
As a pass
in
catcher.
that offense.
Yeah.
And especially with a team that has a quarterback like DJ Lagway, where you want to be able to work the boundary. Not everything needs to be through the middle of the field or into the flat. Amir Jackson's the guy at the tight end spot who can better attack those areas.
And I will say this, though, as much as we want to talk about DJ Lagway, that this run game should be legit, especially with what we think this offensive line can be. And we're going to talk about it in a second. And then what we've heard about not only Jaden Ball, but like Jacoby Jackson generating a lot of buzz too. Hayden Hansen probably gives you a little bit more value as a run blocker. I'm interested to see how they use these tight ends and put these tight ends in different spots to let them be successful. But I think he got some different skill sets. And if Amir Jackson can become that guy that we trust to throw it on the football field, that's where that high-end pass catching ability comes from, at least in my opinion. Offensive line, a weapon. And this is actually a more important conversation than I think a lot. I think a lot of people say, I like Florida's offensive line. Yeah, me too. Here's the thing about the offensive line. We haven't really heard anything about this unit in fall camp. What we have heard is Florida's running the football really well, and that Florida's moving the football on offense a decent amount. Dill, the reason I say that is we've done a lot of these scrimmage reports and fall camp intel. There are a lot of programs that can't even run a scrimmage because their offensive line can't hold up in pass protection. I haven't heard that once from Florida during the fall camp season, you might say. And they going up against some legit dudes on the defense side of the football. That gives me a lot of optimism that, hey, maybe we're not just good up front. Maybe this offensive line can be a weapon because, Dill, for the first half of the season, that probably wasn't the case. When you have an offensive line that goes up against any front seven in the country and you can lean on them to lean into the run game and hold up in pass protection, that's huge because there's not a lot of other teams that can say that. Can Florida's offensive line be a weapon against the best defenses in the country? When you start to think national championship, you need this to happen. I kind of feel like it might be taking place for Florida.
And you saw them running the ball on teams really well towards the end of the year. Like to run the ball the way they did against Ole Miss and LSU and some of those teams later in the year, I think you're really encouraged about what that side of it was. The pass pro, I think, still probably could have used a little bit of work. And that's why, like, the encouraging part of this fall camp for me is not that they can run the ball. I knew they'd be, or I was pretty sure they'd be able to run the ball. It's about, like, can they block Tyreek Sapp? Can they block Gums? Can they block Woods? That's probably the bigger thing for me because that's where I think they needed to take the step was give DJ Lagway a little bit more time and not force him to be as much of a creator in the pocket and let him just stand in there and rip it.
And go rip it. I agree. And look, we've heard buzz around Jaden Woods and we've heard some buzz around George Gums, but we haven't really heard that narrative of this defensive line has taken over practices where we can't even run a scrimmage. That's good. Because I know this defense can get after the passer with what we saw them do in November. I think that's a plus, and I'm excited to see what this offensive line can do, especially early in the year. Going on the road to play in LSU, you want to be able to run the football. We'll see if they can. I think they'll be able to. we'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.